"You're coming with me," said the lonely alpha to the woman beaten for giving birth to 3 girls. The palace corridors echoed with silence, broken only by the faint drip of water from the cracked ceiling. Alara crouched in the shadow of the tall stone walls, her hands trembling as she pressed them against her chest. Pain throbbed in her body, not just from the bruises her captors had left, but from the weight of her despair. She had given birth to 3 daughters, 3 tiny lives she had carried through nights of fear and cold. And for that she had been punished. Her mind wandered back to the cold chamber where the king had declared them cursed. The words had cut deeper than any whip, deeper than the bruises forming on her arms. "Girls are weak. Girls bring misfortune," the king had said, his voice sharp, echoing in the stone halls. Even the servants had turned their faces away, unwilling or afraid to speak a kind word. Elara's daughters, small, fragile, yet alive, were hidden in a basket beneath the thin straw of the servant quarters. Beth. She had seen them only for a moment, peeking through the door to make sure their breaths were steady, their tiny fingers curled around each other like fragile vines clinging to life. Her heart ached with guilt and fear. How could she protect them in a world that seemed determined to destroy all she loved? The forest near the palace had always called to her, a dark promise of freedom she had never dared answer. Tonight, however, it seemed to beckon with urgency. She could not stay, could not endure another night of cruelty, but fear wrapped around her chest like iron chains. To leave was to risk everything, yet to stay was certain torment. Footsteps approached, quick, deliberate, and heavy. Alara pressed herself further into the shadows, holding her breath as a figure emerged from the darkness of the corridor. He was unlike anyone she had ever seen. Tall, broad, with eyes like storm clouds and hair as dark as midnight. Even in the dim light, he radiated power, danger, and loneliness. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low but commanding. It carried the weight of authority that demanded obedience.
Elara shrank back. I mean no harm," she whispered, her voice trembling.
The man stepped closer, and with a speed that was almost unreal, he was in front of her. His gaze studied her as if he were trying to read the very essence of her soul. "You are broken," he said simply. "And yet, you survive." But she had always thought she was invisible, a shadow among shadows. Yet here he was, seeing her, really seeing her. "I cannot stay here anymore. They will kill my daughters if I do not hide them."
He tilted his head slightly, a gesture that was both curious and calculating.
"You have courage," he observed, "and yet you do not know how to protect yourself fully, Bet. That is why I am here." Elara's heart pounded. "Who are you?"
"I am Kale," he said, almost as if the name itself held a warning. "And you are coming with me." The words struck her like a storm.
What do you mean?" "You have been broken by this palace, by the world," Kale replied. "I will take you where no one can harm you. Not them, not anyone." "If you survive with me, perhaps your daughters might survive as well." This was madness. To go with him meant leaving everything she had ever known, or everything she thought she knew. And yet, the way he looked at her, as if he alone could carry her fear and her pain, stirred something inside her that she had not felt in years. Hope, Bet. She hesitated, torn between instinct and reason. The corridors of the palace had taught her caution, Bay. The forest beyond, however, promised freedom and unknown dangers alike. "I cannot," she said finally, shaking her head. "I have my daughters. I cannot leave them." "Bet." "I." Cale stepped closer, his presence filling the small space. "You will leave them?" he asked, his voice low, almost a growl. "Do you not see that they are safer if you are alive? If you are alive, you can return to them. If you stay here, you die, and they will die with you." Her tears blurred her vision. She had fought to survive, fought to protect, and yet the walls of the palace seemed to close around her tighter with every passing day. Finally, she nodded, a silent surrender to the strange force that was Cale. She did not fully understand him, and she did not trust him. But she understood that staying would be certain death. Cale extended his hand, and she hesitated only for a moment before placing hers in his. His grip was strong but careful, guiding her through the hidden passages that led beyond the palace walls. The night air hit her like a cleansing wave. The stars above were distant and cold, yet they offered the faintest comfort, a reminder that the world beyond the palace was vast, and she was no longer trapped in stone and shadow. The forest loomed ahead, dark and endless. Elara could hear the whispers of the wind through the leaves, like voices speaking secrets she could not yet understand. Cale moved with ease, a shadow among shadows, as if the darkness itself obeyed him. "You must stay close," he instructed. "There are creatures here that will kill without thought, and magic that will confuse your mind. Trust me. Trust only me." Elara nodded, swallowing her fear. Her body ached, her bruises screamed in protest, and yet her spirit, long buried under despair, stirred with the faintest flicker of courage. She realized, in that moment, that she was not entirely alone. Not anymore. Past, or maybe only minutes. It was impossible to tell in the thick darkness. The forest shifted around them, alive with sounds that made her heart race. The rustle of leaves, the snap of twigs, the distant howl of an unseen wolf. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to turn back. Yet Cale's presence beside her was a tether to reality, a strange anchor she did not understand, but could not ignore. Finally, they stopped at a clearing where moonlight spilled across the forest floor. Cale turned to her, his face shadowed, yet unmistakably human, yet more than human in the aura he carried. "You're safe, for now," he said. "But this is only the beginning. The world that broke you will not let go so easily. There are forces watching, forces that wish to harm your daughters. You must prepare yourself." Elara looked up at him, tears glistening in the pale light. "I do not know if I am strong enough," she whispered. Cale's gaze softened, and for the first time he allowed a trace of vulnerability to show. "Strength is not given, Elara. Bet. It is forged in fire, in pain, and in choice. And you have already begun to forge it simply by surviving this long." Psst. She wanted to believe him, to feel the warmth of hope blooming in the icy recesses of her heart, and yet fear clawed at her mind. The unknown stretched before her, vast and terrifying. "I will try," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Cale nodded almost approvingly and stepped back into the shadows. His eyes never left her, though, as if he were seeing not just her body, but the very essence of her soul. "Try," he said, "for yourself and for them. And remember, if you falter, I will not let you fall. Bet." Elara swallowed, taking in the weight of his words. They were strange words from a stranger, yet in them was a promise a promise that someone might finally see her as more than broken, that someone might fight for her and for the daughters she had risked everything to protect. As she settled near the edge of the clearing, the night pressing close, she allowed herself a single thought, fragile and almost frightening in its audacity. Maybe she could survive this, and maybe, just maybe, she could reclaim a life that had been stolen from her. Yet even as the thought bloomed, a distant howl echoed through the trees. Not a wolf's howl, nor the wind, but something older, darker, and full of intent. The forest seemed to lean closer, waiting, watching. She glanced at Cale, but he was already alert, eyes scanning the darkness beyond the clearing, muscles coiled like a predator ready to strike. She realized in a chill that ran deeper than her bruised skin that her journey was only beginning, and the world outside the palace walls was far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. And somewhere, in the shadows just beyond the moonlight, eyes watched them, hungry, patient, and relentless.
Alara squeezed her hands together, feeling both fear and a strange thrill.
She had left one kind of prison behind, only to step into another, one where survival demanded more than hiding. It demanded courage, cunning, and a willingness to trust a man she barely knew. The forest whispered secrets she could not yet hear, and the night waited for her first move. The forest was alive in ways Alara had never imagined. Shadows stretched and twisted between the trees, as if they had a life of their own. Leaves whispered secrets. The wind carried faint laughter. Or was it a warning? Every sound made her pulse quicken. Her bruised body ached, but she pressed on, following Cale through narrow paths lit only by slivers of moonlight. Cale moved like he belonged to the forest. Every step was confident, precise, his senses alert to even the smallest movement. His presence was commanding, yet there was a strange gentleness in the way he occasionally glanced at her. The combination was confusing, frightening, and strangely comforting. "You must stay close," Cale reminded, his voice cutting through the night. The forest does not forgive carelessness." Alara nodded, keeping her eyes on him. I will." Her voice was small, but determined. She had survived cruelty and pain before. She could survive this, somehow. Hours passed, though time seemed different in this place, slowed and stretched by the forest's magic. Shadows moved independently of the moonlight, and the trees sometimes seemed to lean toward her, watching. For strange creatures scuttled just beyond sight. Alara did not speak. Words felt useless here. She simply followed Cale, matching his pace as best she could. Eventually, they arrived at a clearing where a large stone structure stood, overgrown with ivy and glowing faintly under the moon. It was a sanctuary of some kind, old and enduring. Cale gestured for her to wait at the edge while he stepped forward, chanting quietly in a language she could not understand. Elara's heart pounded as the forest seemed to hum in response. Something shifted in the air. Shadows lifted slightly from the ground, swirling before settling in a pattern she could not decipher. Cale's eyes glowed faintly in the dark, reflecting both power and an ancient sorrow. "You see," he said softly, when he returned to her side. "This place is alive. It watches, it protects, and it punishes. You will need to learn its rules if you hope to survive." I don't understand any of it," she admitted, fear tingling through her chest. Tael's gaze softened for a moment.
"No one truly understands it at first.
"But in time, you will."
Alara's eyes followed the shadows that danced at the edges of the clearing.
Something in them felt familiar, as if the forest recognized her in ways she did not yet understand. Her daughters' faces came to her mind, their tiny hands, their soft cries. A pang of fear tightened her chest. Could she truly protect them if she stayed here, in this strange place of magic and danger? Cale must have read her thoughts. "Your daughters are safe, for now," he said, almost gently. But you must grow stronger. Their fate is tied to yours, whether you like it or not." She looked at him, and for the first time she noticed the weight he carried. His broad shoulders, the way his hands flexed unconsciously, the darkness in his eyes. It was a loneliness so deep it was almost visible, a pain that had hardened him, shaped him into the alpha he was. And yet, beneath it, she sensed vulnerability, a hint that he, too, had been broken by the world. Despair. "I don't understand you," she whispered. Cale smiled faintly, almost bitterly.
Few do, and fewer survive the attempt to understand.
Elara swallowed, unsure if she wanted to try. His words were like fire and ice all at once.
She wanted to run, yet something inside her urged her to stay, to learn, to survive, perhaps not just for herself, but for the daughters she loved.
Night stretched on, and Cale led her through the sanctuary.
Small wolves, their fur shimmering silver in the moonlight, observed them silently. They were not ordinary animals. Their eyes held intelligence, and when they moved, it was with a purpose, as if they were extensions of Cale himself.
They will protect you, Cale explained.
But you must understand them, as you will understand the forest. Trust is earned, not given. Berkey. Elara nodded, keeping her gaze on the creatures. One of them, a large wolf with a scar across its muzzle, stepped closer, sniffed her hand, then backed away. She felt a mixture of fear and awe. These were not pets. They were guardians, and she was intruding in their world. Hours, or perhaps days, passed in a strange, timeless routine. KL instructed her on survival. How to move silently, how to read the forest, how to listen to the whispers in the wind. Each lesson was exhausting but fascinating. She began to notice subtle patterns, signs of magic embedded in the very soil and air. One evening, while Cale rested near a fire, Elara dared to ask, "Why me? Why did you take me from the palace?" Cale's eyes were fixed on the flames.
"Because I sensed what no one else could see," he said quietly.
Breath. I sensed that you could survive, that you could endure.
That you might change the fate of things that matter. Elara's heart skipped.
His words were heavy with meaning, and though she did not fully understand them, she felt a spark of hope, a dangerous, flickering hope that perhaps she had a purpose beyond suffering. But the forest did not forgive hope lightly. Later, as Elara explored near the edge of the sanctuary, a shadow moved between the trees. It was swift and silent, a predator watching from afar. She froze, heart pounding. Cale appeared from nowhere, eyes glowing faintly, and stepped between her and the shadow.
"You're being watched," he said quietly, voice like gravel. "They are aware of your presence."
The forest shields you for now, but not for long. Fear clutched at her chest. Who are they? Those who wish to claim what is yours, and what you do not yet understand is theirs by old right. You are tied to things older than you imagine. Your daughters, your blood, the curse that follows you. It is not mere coincidence that you are here. Elara shook her head, overwhelmed. I don't understand any of this. Kale's eyes softened. You will, but you must survive the night first. As the moon reached its peak, the forest seemed to grow darker, the shadows deeper. Elara felt a strange pressure, as if unseen eyes were measuring her very soul.
Kale moved silently to her side, placing a hand on her shoulder.
The touch was firm yet reassuring. You are not alone, he murmured.
Not while I stand beside you. Elara wanted to believe him, and for a fleeting moment she did. But then a howl shattered the stillness, a sound not entirely of this world. The silver wolves bristled, growls rumbling in their throats. Kale's body tensed, ready for action.
Possible imagine. Elara's fear surged. What is that? Howell's jaw tightened. A warning. And a test.
There are forces here that will challenge you, force you to confront fears you did not know existed. The forest will judge you, and so will they.
Bay. The sound came again, closer this time, echoing with a chilling resonance. Elara felt her heart beat faster, her breaths shallow. She realized that she had entered a world where survival demanded more than courage. It demanded instinct, trust, and a willingness to step into danger. Kale glanced at her, eyes glowing in the pale moonlight. Do you trust me? Elara hesitated. Trust was dangerous. Beck, it could save her, or doom her. But the thought of her daughters, the spark of hope that had survived so much pain, urged her to answer. Yes, she whispered, voice trembling but firm. Kale nodded once, sharply, and stepped forward, leading her deeper into the forest. Past, the shadows seemed to part, as if acknowledging his authority. Yet even as they moved, the echo of the otherworldly howl followed them, a reminder that the night and the forest was far from safe. Elara felt a thrill and a fear she had never known. She realized that she was no longer just a woman fleeing cruelty. She was a participant in a larger, darker world, one that could destroy her if she faltered, but might also offer a strange kind of power and purpose if she survived. And somewhere hidden in the shadows, eyes watched them, waiting, patient and intent. Bake. Elara woke to the sound of rain pattering softly against the leaves, the silver light of dawn filtering through the thick canopy above. She sat up, shivering, but it was not the cold that made her tremble. It was the thought of what she had left behind and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. The forest had been alive with strange whispers during the night, voices she could not understand, yet felt deep in her bones. Kale was already awake, standing near the edge of the clearing, eyes scanning the shadows as if he could see beyond the physical world. His presence was commanding as always, but now it carried an unspoken weight. He was more than a protector. He was a guardian, a sentinel of unseen forces that had chosen to watch over her.
Elara,
he said without turning, his voice low, steady.
You slept fitfully. I could not help it, she admitted, hugging her knees to her chest.
I keep thinking about my daughters, about what will happen if I fail them. Kael finally turned, his eyes softer than she had ever seen.
You will not fail, he said simply.
But you must understand something. Survival here is more than running or hiding.
It is knowing what you protect and what you are willing to risk to protect it. There are forces watching, testing, and sometimes tempting you. They are drawn to power. Your daughters, their blood, it carries something old. Something that those who wish to control the world will seek. Breath. If you are not ready, if you hesitate, they will be taken. She had long known that the palace had hated her daughters, that the king's court feared them, but she had never imagined that their very existence could attract forces beyond human understanding. Kale stepped closer, and she noticed the faintest tremor in his hands.
I will teach you,
He continued. Pang. Not just to survive, but to fight. To protect them. But you must learn to trust, not only me, but also yourself. Elara felt a spark of courage ignite within her chest. For the first time in weeks, perhaps months, she felt the possibility of hope. The world beyond the palace walls was harsh and strange, but here, in the forest, she could imagine a future. A future where her daughters lived. Kale led her to a small stone circle at the heart of the sanctuary. The circle was etched with symbols that glowed faintly in the morning light. "This is a place of learning," he said.
It will help you connect to the power within you, the power that is tied to your daughters, to their survival, and to the forest itself.
They hummed faintly beneath her touch, a warmth spreading through her hands and up her arms. A strange feeling rose in her chest, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Beck. She did not fully understand what she was feeling, but she knew it was important.
Kale watched her silently.
You are stronger than you realize, he said. And in time you will see that strength is not just in the body.
It is in the heart, in the mind.
In the choices you make. Alara's gaze met his.
There was something in his eyes, a vulnerability, a hidden sorrow that made her heart ache. She wanted to reach out, to bridge the distance between them, but fear held her back. Not fear of him, but of what it would mean to trust someone so completely. The first true test came sooner than she expected. Bay. A shadow passed over the stone circle, and the forest seemed to grow still, as if holding its breath. Kale stiffened, his eyes narrowing. They are coming, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Elara's pulse quickened. She had learned to sense danger, to read the subtle signs of the forest. But this was unlike anything she had felt before. A chill ran down her spine as a figure emerged from the shadows, tall, cloaked, and moving with unnatural grace. Kaal stepped in front of her, placing himself between Elara and the intruder. You do not belong here, he said, voice like steel. The figure's eyes glowed faintly under the hood. She is the mother, it said, the one who carries the blood, the one who can change fate. Elara's breath caught. Change fate, she whispered. Yes, Kale said, tightening his stance. And that is why she is in danger. But do not be afraid.
You are not alone. The intruder raised a hand, and the air shimmered with power.
The forest responded. Branches twisted, shadows lengthened, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse. Elara felt a surge of fear and adrenaline. She realized that survival here required not just strength of body, but strength of will. Kale's hand brushed hers, a fleeting touch, but enough to ground her. Bass. Focus, he said. Breathe. Trust yourself.
Elara closed her eyes, drawing in the scent of the earth, the leaves, the rain-soaked soil.
She felt the power beneath her fingers, the hum of the forest. And for the first time, she understood that the forest was not just a place. It was alive, and it was willing to fight for her if she could connect to it. When she opened her eyes, she raised her hands instinctively, and a subtle wave of energy pulsed outward, pushing the intruder back. Kale's eyes widened, not in surprise, but in recognition. "You have it," he said, voice low, "the strength to protect them." "But this is only the beginning!" The intruder withdrew, melting back into the shadows, but the warning remained clear. There were those who would stop at nothing to claim her daughters, to use them for purposes she could not yet comprehend. And Kale would be there to fight by her side, but he could not bear all the weight alone. Over the next days, Kale pushed her to train, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. He taught her to sense danger, to anticipate threats, to feel the flow of the forest around her. Each lesson was exhausting, frustrating, and sometimes terrifying. And yet, with each passing day, she grew stronger. She felt the bruises on her body fading in comparison to the courage blooming within her. One evening, as the firelight danced across the clearing, Kaal finally spoke of himself.
"I was not always this way," he admitted. "I once trusted someone."
And I lost them. The pain hardened me, and I became the Alpha. I vowed never to be weak again. Elara studied him, noticing the flicker of sadness in his eyes. "And yet you trust me," she said softly.
I do,
He said almost gruffly. "Because I see you. Because I know that you will survive, and that survival will not only save your daughters, but perhaps even me."
Her heart thudded in her chest. The intimacy of the moment, the raw honesty, was almost unbearable.
She wanted to reach out, to close the distance between them, but she could not. Fear of failure, of attachment, of the dangers that waited beyond the sanctuary, held her back. That night, as she slept under the shelter of the stone circle, she dreamed of her daughters. They were laughing, playing in a meadow bathed in sunlight, free from pain and fear. But the laughter turned to cries, the meadow darkened, and shadows closed in. She awoke with a start, heart racing, tears streaming down her face. Kaal was there, silently watching over her. "It is not just the forest you must learn to face," he said.
"It is your fears, your doubts, the things that linger in your heart. Only when you confront them can you truly protect your daughters."
Elara nodded, swallowing hard. She realized that Kaal was more than a protector. He was a guide, a teacher, and perhaps the first person to truly see her face. And yet the fear of losing him, of failing him, and of the dangers yet to come, tightened around her chest like a vice.
Days later, the true test arrived.
The forest trembled with the approach of creatures older than memory, beings that twisted reality around them. Shadows moved independently, whispering threats she could barely comprehend. Pael stood firm, placing himself between Elara and the approaching darkness. "Remember what I taught you," he said. "Pain. Trust yourself. Trust the forest. Trust me." Elara closed her eyes, focusing on her daughters, on the spark of hope that had survived so much pain. When she opened them, a wave of energy surged through her, sending the shadows recoiling. Kale's eyes met hers, and in that moment an unspoken bond formed, a bond of trust, of shared strength, and of survival. The shadows dissipated, but the warning remained. The danger was far from over, and the forest itself seemed to whisper that this was only the beginning. Bear.
Elara realized then that her journey was no longer about escape or survival alone. It was about transformation.
About becoming the woman capable of protecting her daughters, confronting the darkness, and perhaps, in time, finding a connection with the man who had saved her from the palace and from herself. The forest was restless that morning. Mist curled between the trees like slow-moving serpents, and the air carried a tension that prickled Alara's skin. Even the silver wolves, Kale's guardians, stood still, ears twitching, as if the world itself held its breath. Pay. Alara tightened the cloak around her shoulders and followed Kale through the underbrush. Her body was stronger now, trained by days of survival, by fear, and by the silent lessons of the forest. Her mind, once clouded with despair, had begun to sharpen, guided by Kale's relentless instruction and the faint whisper of the forest's magic. "They're coming," Kale said, his voice a low growl. His eyes scanned the shadows, glowing faintly in the mist. Not just predators, something older. Something tied to the curse. Alara swallowed. Bet. The words still carried weight, heavy and frightening. The curse had haunted her life, shadowed her every choice. Her daughter's tiny faces, their laughter and cries, had been the reason she survived, but now that very magic that had protected them could be their undoing. "Then we fight," she said, her voice steady, though her heart beat rapidly. "Whatever comes, we fight together." Kale's gaze softened, just for a fraction of a moment. "Together," he echoed, and she saw in his eyes a flicker of something she had not noticed before. Hope. Bah. They reached the heart of the sanctuary, a vast clearing where the stone circle shone faintly under the rising sun. The air shimmered with the energy of the forest. Shadows danced unnaturally along the edges, and a faint hum vibrated through the earth. Alara felt it under her feet, through her hands, through her very bones. Bay. This was the pulse of the forest, the old magic that had chosen her, and her daughters, for something greater. From the mist, figures emerged. Dark shapes, taller and more menacing than any creature she had faced before. Their eyes glowed with a strange light, and their forms seemed almost fluid, shifting between human and something older, something untamed. Kale stepped in front of her, stance wide, body coiled like a predator ready to strike. "Alara, focus. Remember your daughters. Remember the forest."
"Let it guide you." Alara closed her eyes, taking in a deep breath.
Despair. She felt the pulse of life beneath her feet, the energy of the trees around her, and the warmth of Kale's presence beside her. It was not just survival she was fighting for. It was love, courage, and the promise she had made to herself and to the children she had risked everything to protect. Bay. When she opened her eyes, a subtle wave of energy rippled from her, brushing against the dark figures. The shadows recoiled, but they did not vanish. They advanced again, and this time the forest itself seemed to rise with her. Branches stretched like hands, roots curled from the soil, and the silver wolves leapt forward, fangs bared, snarling at the intruders. Kale moved beside her, every motion precise, every strike controlled. They were in sync, a seamless partnership forged from trust and necessity. He fought not just with his strength, but with the intelligence of the forest, anticipating movement she could barely perceive. And she, Alara, felt the surge of power flowing through her, no longer just fear, but determination. But she would not fail. The battle raged, shadows twisting, magic colliding with the living forest, silver wolves darting like lightning. Alara raised her hands again, channeling the energy of the sanctuary. Her voice rose, a clear, commanding sound. The intruders faltered, momentarily stunned by the unexpected power she wielded. Kale's eyes met hers, wide with acknowledgement.
"You are stronger than I imagined," he said, voice carrying over the chaos. Alara didn't answer.
She could feel her daughter's presence in her heart, their lives entwined with this battle. Every strike, every movement, every wave of energy she summoned was for them. She would protect them, even if it meant facing death itself. Then, from the center of the clearing, a figure stepped forward. A tall, cloaked being with eyes that burned like embers. Its presence radiated ancient authority. "The blood of the mother carries power beyond your reckoning," it said. "She will either fulfill the prophecy or doom all she holds dear." Ilara felt her knees tremble. Kael's hand on her shoulder steadied her. "Do not falter," he said. "You are ready. Trust yourself." The figure raised a hand, and the world seemed to twist. Shadows reached toward her daughters in the hidden realm of vision, threatening to consume them. Fear, primal and raw, surged through Ilara, but she did not yield. She stepped forward, calling on the strength she had forged in the forest, in the sanctuary, in the days and nights of relentless training. The ground beneath her pulsed, trees bending as if in recognition of her courage. Light shone from her hands, pure and unwavering, pushing back the darkness. Kael fought beside her, unyielding, but he allowed her the space to channel the power she had carried within her all along. Together, they were unstoppable. The shadows wailed, twisting and retreating as the forest rose with them, protecting the mother and her daughters. But suddenly, the figure faltered, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Ilara seized the moment, stepping forward with a force born of love and desperation. Breath. She placed her hands upon the ground, and a wave of energy surged outward, washing over the intruders. When the light faded, the clearing was silent. The intruders were gone. The shadows dissipated and the forest hummed gently, a quiet applause of life and resilience.
Ilara sank to her knees, exhausted but triumphant.
Kyle knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "You saved them."
Ilara's lips trembled. We did it," she corrected, glancing at him.
The weight of their bond, their shared struggle, pressed against her chest in a way that was both terrifying and comforting. Kael's eyes softened. "Yes, together." As the sun rose higher, casting golden light through the trees, Ilara felt something shift within her. The fear that had haunted her, the despair that had weighed on her heart, was replaced by a quiet, fierce strength. She had faced the curse, the shadows, and the threat to her daughters, and survived. She had grown stronger, wiser, and more capable than she had ever imagined. Later, in the stillness of the sanctuary, she finally allowed herself to feel the full depth of her emotions. Relief, yes, but also a strange warmth whenever Kael's gaze met hers. She realized that the man who had seemed so untouchable, so distant, had opened himself to her in ways that mirrored her own growth. He had trusted her, fought beside her, and allowed her to become more than she had ever thought possible. Kael spoke quietly as they watched the sun climb higher. "Your daughters are safe. The curse is broken, at least for now. But you have changed. You have become someone the forest recognizes, someone capable of protecting them and of shaping your own destiny." Ilara nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I could not have done it without you," she admitted. "You did it for them," Kael said gently. "Break, I only guided you. You are stronger than any curse, any shadow." "You are the mother they need and more." The silver wolves padded quietly around them. tail swishing, eyes glinting like mirrors of the moon. They had fought, survived, and now rested alongside the two who had earned their respect. Elara's thoughts turned to her daughters, hidden in their safe haven. Bray. She imagined them running through fields of sunlight, free from fear, laughter spilling like music across the world. She allowed herself a small smile, the first true smile she had felt in months, and then Kale took her hand. It was a simple gesture, but in it lay an acknowledgement of everything they had endured, every fear they had faced, and every trust they had built. Elara's heart raced, but she did not pull away. She let herself feel it, let herself recognize the bond that had formed between them, not just survival, but something deeper, something unspoken yet undeniable. They stood together in the clearing, hand in hand, facing the forest and the new day. The trials were not over. The world beyond the sanctuary was vast, and danger still lingered in hidden corners. But for now, they had survived. They had faced the darkness, and together they had emerged stronger. The forest whispered around them, leaves rustling as if in approval. The prophecy, whatever it truly meant, had been shaped by their courage and their choices. Elara's daughters would live, and the mother who had once been broken was now unshakable, resilient, and alive with purpose. Kale squeezed her hand gently. "The forest has accepted you," he said. "And so have I. Together we will face whatever comes next."
Elara nodded, her chest full, her spirit renewed. "Together," she echoed, voice steady and sure.
As the sun rose higher, spilling golden light across the sanctuary, a distant rumble echoed through the forest, a reminder that the world was never truly still. But for the first time, Elara did not tremble. Yes, she had survived, she had fought, and she had learned that courage, love, and trust could shape even the darkest destiny. And, somewhere deep within the forest, the silver wolves howled, a song of triumph, of life, and of a bond unbroken. The journey was far from over, but the broken woman was gone. In her place stood a mother, a warrior and a soul reborn.